How you doing?
Good, hanging in there, all things considered.
Yeah, I
Um,
would imagine.
Absolutely. Ryan, real quick before we dive in, I just want to share a quick housekeeping note to everyone who's joined us. If you have any questions toward the end of each of these sessions, feel free to drop any questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll do our best to get to a couple of those questions at the end of each talk. Ryan, you need no introduction, but I'm going to attempt one anyway, just for our guests joining us. So Ryan Tedder, of course, is a three-time Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, and producer. He is the frontman of One Republic, as well as the co-executive producer and mentor on NBC's Songland, which has aired its second season this summer. With One Republic, Ryan has achieved 3 top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, including Counting Stars and Apologize with Timbaland, and another 6 in the top 40. And as a writer-producer, I'm sure you equally know his work as a writer and producer on hits for Beyonce, Adele, U2, the Jonas Brothers, Charlie Puth. I could keep going, but I want to get to the nuts and bolts of today's conversation. So, Ryan, when you announced this panel to your followers this morning on Instagram, you talked about how sync certainly played a very pivotal role for you when you were getting your start as a singer-songwriter. So tell me about how sync first made an impact in your career. What was your first big break when it came to whether it was writing music for commercials or writing jingles? What
So yeah, so first of all, I'm going to try and turn you up because I'm not getting enough volume out of you guys, and I want to be able to make sure I can answer every question. There we go. Wow, much better. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I moved to LA in 2003, and the money, I moved here on a credit card that maxed out. I ran out of money about 30 days after moving here. I went to Ralph's and just like maxed out my card on groceries and went to IKEA and Burbank and like got a mattress and like the basic necessities, and then like boom, I ran out of money. And 2 weeks after that point, when I was literally like, I have no money, I don't come from money, I wasn't given like money from my parents for graduating. Hey, here's all this money we have. You can take it now and go live your life. I didn't get any of that. So about 2 weeks later, I get a check for $7,500 from a song I did with Bubba Sparks and Timbaland called She Tried, that ended up in a movie called Without a Paddle. Mm-hmm. And that song got licensed for, whatever it was, 20 something thousand. And I took my share of it, and I got this check for $7,500, which as a 21 or 22-year-old, $7,500. I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. Like I'm the wealthiest person I know. This is incredible. And that was the first inkling I had about songs as it pertains to film and TV. I've been very vocal with in countless interviews about the fact that like, the beginning of my career, the first 3 years, the thing that paid for my wife's wedding ring, our honeymoon, our marriage, our life, my car, like everything it wasn't Apologize or Bleeding Love or Halo or any of the first early hits I had. It was all licensing for TV and film. It was all sync money. And the guy that produced my first demo, a guy named Charles Pollard, out of Culver City, he was a sync guy. He did huge campaigns for Toyota, Honda, Minolta, Canon, Target, you name it. And I didn't even know about that world. But I remember walking into a studio one time, and I'm working on pop records, and he has like a picture of a Honda CRV or whatever driving, through the snow. And he's just like sitting here scoring stuff. And it kind of like popped my brain. And then, but I didn't move to LA to get into that, but it became very much a key component of my existence. And my first real big break in that world came from Adam Shankman, movie director who did Hairspray and What Men Want, and more recently, and he's been one of my long-term, really close friends. He brought me in with Buck Damon, the music supervisor, to do songs for Step Up, the film, the first Step Up, when Channing Tatum was just like a random high school graduate. And I ended up doing half the songs for that movie, and that changed my life. And there was a period of time before One Republic or anything else took off where I remember telling my wife, this is a lot of fun. And if all I do is songs for TV, for commercials, for film, I will be happy because it means I get to make music. And to this day, that's been a huge component. OneRepublic we've been very lucky in that over the 13 years, we've been one of the most licensed acts in Sony ATV history. I've learned a lot about what it takes to nail a song for a campaign. We've done 3 or 4 global Jeep and Chrysler campaigns and Fiat, and I have the current Valentino campaign with Elton John and Lady Gaga. It is Brent Kutzel, who's in my band, and I, back in March, right before this whole thing went crazy, we formed our own company called Sync House that focuses solely on music for TV and film. And we started off with Top Gun, the upcoming Top Gun film, doing music for that, segueing into things for T-Mobile and for different companies. And I got to tell you, I just wrapped a thing for Hallmark for Christmas. I had more fun doing that session than like 80%, 90% of the other sessions that I do. So I very much am still a massive advocate for, I tell people on Songland all the time, you don't just have to write hits. If you want to make a living in music, you don't just have to write hit songs. There's a way to connect with people, in a broad sense that doesn't involve just being in the top 40. So anyway, I'm a massive, massive proponent, advocate, participator, fan of sync music.
Yeah, you like you just said, you represent the full pipeline of all the different ways that sync can help you both make a living and make a cultural impact. So with the OneRepublic side of your sync success, like what was the first early sync in your OneRepublic days where you thought, okay, this is an example of how sync can take us on to the next level?
The first sync we ever had as a group was a song called Too Easy. We were on Columbia Records at the time before we got dropped. I was being managed, I remember, by Bino and Missy Worth. And she called me, hey, I need you to clear the sync request, this TV show called Bones on, I don't even know what network it's been on for 20 years. I don't know how long. It's been on for probably 12 years. Excuse me. So Bones, that TV show, season 1, they used the entirety of one of our songs called Too Easy. And it's a very Jeff Buckley-esque style song. And I remember I was playing as a band. We were off of, is it Fairfax, playing Molly Malone's, the Irish bar pub thing.
Yeah.
And we had a residency there for a month. And I remember Shankman, funny enough, was in the audience. And I was so happy about that sync, because it was obviously a check that we got for, I don't know what it was, like call it 10 grand or something. I needed that very much. And I remember telling the audience, hey, if anybody here watches Bones, we have a song in Bones. And then my manager reprimanded me after the show. She's like, nobody cares about sync or license. They don't know. And I was like, and needless to say, we parted ways. But I was very proud of that moment. And that was our first licensing. That was our first sync. And then that changed that opened Pandora's box for OneRepublic for sync. And then I remember 3 years later, we had finally taken off. We were on our second album. Funny enough, Ricardo Baca did a big interview in Denver when he worked for the Denver Post regarding our second album. I've known Ricardo for years. And we had a song called Secrets that got licensed for, and now I'm spacing on what the movie, huge Disney film with Nicolas Cage and what's it called? Had to do with like
National
sorcery.
Treasure?
No, not National Treasure. It had to do with like magic and sorcery and like
Sorcerer's Apprentice. Yeah,
I think it was the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And we did a huge thing in New York City. They flew us out and we did the red carpet and it was just like, and they wrote us a massive check for this song. And I remember getting the call from my manager, Ron Lafitte, as I was pulling up to the sushi place in Denver with a bunch of friends and family. And he's like, hey, so this is a good way to end the week. But, Sorcerer's Apprentice just licensed your song for X amount of dollars. It was in the 6 figures. And I was so blown away that he walked in and was like, guys, dinner and drinks on me. Let's celebrate. And that was the second. And we've had many pivotal moments with Stink, with Counting Stars and Good Life. Good Life became the theme song for Disney theme parks for about 3 years. And then we have another song called Feel Again that was, I think, the most licensed song in the Sony ATV world for probably 4 or 5 years. Sandals Resort just kept extending the usage of it. I think they used it for like 5 or 6 years straight.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I am the one thing that I've learned about licensing for TV and film and in sync is, and this is what a lot of artists tell me when they're like, why don't you look back when I started the band in 2003, 4, it was uncool if you're a band to license your music. It was like not cool. Like we used, I mean, this is old white guy stupid rules, but like we use like anything Tom York and Radiohead does, that's our bar of like what's acceptable, which is ludicrous. And I was like, no, I'm going to do as much of this as humanly possible. And honest to God, it's changed our lives. And now with my publishing company, one of my selling points when I sign new writers is whether you sign with us for 30, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, the first thing I'm going to do is go as hard as possible after licensing TV and film. I think it's the absolute best way to recoup a publishing deal. I just did it. New writer Marty Murrow, I locked him with Ellen DeGeneres' Game of Games, the theme song to Game of Games that premiered yesterday. That's me and one of my writers, and recouped his deal like that. And I think that it serves so many purposes from an artistic or creative standpoint. And frankly, in 2020, with 40 million songs being uploaded every single day to Spotify and TikTok and all this stuff, like it is so hard to cut through all that noise. And for me, I will take a like Chrysler campaign or Apple campaign or whatever fill in the blank movie or TV campaign 7 days of the week for driving eyes and culture towards a song that I've written. That's my absolute go-to vehicle. Because there's a lot of noise out there. So you got to figure out ways to cut through.
Absolutely. And it's especially important that you're paying it forward for the next generation of artists that you're working with, whether it's Songland or the folks who signed your publishing firm. So speaking of giving back, let's talk about the latest collaboration you did with your friend Olivier at Fiat Chrysler earlier this year for the FCA brand campaign that went live in the early weeks of quarantine. You guys had a song called Better Days, which was featured in that. Tell me about how that all came about. Was that a song that was 100% ready when the opportunity came about, or did you tweak it? What was the?
So this is one of the craziest stories, and having done a lot of TV and film, this is once in a, like, I can't think of another time where a song got licensed this much, this fast in my career, honestly. So I came back from playing an underplay tour in Europe. We were setting up for a One Republic World Tour, a new album, 100 different things, and all of that incinerated because of COVID. I flew back from London March 13th, right when Trump cut off like travel from Europe. That happened to be the day we were flying back, so we made it back.
Thank goodness.
We were finishing. We didn't know what coronavirus was. We didn't know if it was going to last 2 weeks or 2 years. But we assumed that by the summer, like as they say, when it gets hot, COVID doesn't like heat, whatever. So we're like, okay, well, we're gonna put our album out in a couple months anyway. Let's finish it. We had a song called Better Days. All we had was a chorus, didn't have a verse, didn't have a melody, and I thought, right, well, I'm stuck in my studio for 2 weeks with Brent, the guy who I do all the licensing and TV stuff with, and I thought, okay, let's finish this. And day 3 of coronavirus, I'm listening to the chorus on Better Days, and I'm watching people die in droves in Italy and around the world, realizing how scary this disease is and can be. And all I can think about is what's happening. So I write Better Days from the perspective of being stuck in a pandemic. And I tried to write it in a way that didn't put too much of I didn't want to drop the pin too hard in a pandemic or coronavirus. The key to writing good licensing TV and film songs is make people infer what you're talking about, whether it's the car or the experience of the brand that you're aligning with. You want the listener to feel that brand, but you don't want to be describing that brand. You don't want to be talking about it. You cross that line. A lot of times people write for TV and film, they cross that invisible line. Same with movies and end titles, where all of a sudden, like, it's the equivalent of like you're trying to write the theme song for the Titanic, and the second line of the second verse is "and sinking like the Titanic." And writers oftentimes you get too specific. Brands don't want that. They also don't want like super romantic songs. They don't translate that well for brand. So I wasn't writing this for a brand. I was writing this to just capture what I felt at that moment. And I posted it on Instagram, which I've never done. I've never posted OneRepublic like unreleased songs, but I had been working with Lil Nas X and he did it all the time. And so I was like, well, he does it and he's clearly figured out. So I posted a minute-long version of Better Days. 24 hours later, and the video went off on my Instagram and OneRepublic's Instagram. 24 hours later, I'll give you a 3-week time span. Olivier Francois reaches out to me 24 hours later via Instagram. Hey, what's this song? Can you call me? I think we want to use this we're going to switch out our whole campaign, but it has to be done in the next 48 hours and make this the song for Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge for the next 3 months for our whole campaign. Nobody's buying cars right now. Like the economy was halting, but they'd already bought the ad space. We want to make this the theme song. So we scrambled to get it finished for Olivier, who's a good friend of mine. And we pull it off. And less than 7 days from the time I post it, I'm watching TV. I'm watching the Today Show, and up pops our commercial with Better Days playing in it. Yeah. Then Meredith R., the president of NBC, calls me and says, this Better Days song, we want to make this the theme song for NBC. We're going to use it across. We're going to put every single star from every show and do 60-minute like PSAs for NBC. We want to run it through summer. So then the next week, it's all over NBC. That week, the NFL calls and says, football's not going to happen. Everything's going sideways. We want to make Better Days our theme song for the NFL. 2 days after that, ESPN calls and says, we want to make Better Days the theme song for ESPN moving forward. And I'm leaving out 2 or 3 companies, but the song literally it leapfrogged from like 1 company to 6 companies in about 4 weeks. And I've been doing this since 2003, like writing for whoever would pay me to write stuff. And I've never experienced anything turn around that fast. And again, it wasn't written for Chrysler or a brand, but I think that OneRepublic, my nature of how I approach songwriting, I'll write pop songs and like romantic songs for other groups and artists, with Ariana Grande or Maroon 5 or what have you. But for OneRepublic, for better or worse, our lyrics stylistically and themes are more about the human experience and the human condition. And so I think that's why our music has lent itself so well for licensing. And that's why people go after, I'm not comparing us to U2, but that's why you go after like bands like U2 and Coldplay. They get a lot of calls for licensing because the lyrics aren't aimed at one single person, perspective. They're aimed at the world. They're aimed at more like life and perspective and living in the human experience. And I think that those types of lyrics just lend themselves better for sync.
Absolutely. Again, for all of you tuning in, if you're not taking notes on this masterclass on how to get synced, please start doing so. And Ryan, with Better Days, you guys had mentioned when you first started licensing the song and released it, that a portion of your proceeds would go toward COVID relief. Are there any organizations you guys have aligned with that you think are doing exceptional work?
Yes. Yeah. We immediately lined up with the Red Cross. I mean, that was our first kind of go-to. We had to pick an organization quickly. You'd be surprised how complicated it is to give money away. It's like licensing, we're talking about musicians earlier. You're talking about musicians in the cannabis space. I own a CBD sparkling beverage. I'm wearing the hat. I'm not drinking it right now, but normally I am. And we aligned with Drop for Drop. So every can that we sell, we donate 12 ounces of clean drinking water. Mm-hmm. We build wells in India and Africa and things like that. It's like a 1-for-1 initiative. It took us 3 months to figure out legally how to give money away, like as a corporation. Fortunately, because of COVID and how insane the whole thing was, a lot of the normal rules and regulations and protocols of aligning with 501c3 and charitable organizations, they were a lot more forgiving. So we immediately lined up with American Red Cross to start donating. And I believe we've raised, at this point, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars from streams of Better Days. We also had to, of course, convince our record label to give up some of their profits from that song. They've done it with us one other time, though. When we released Feel Again, the first single off Native back in 2013-14, that song went on. I mean, I think it's probably, we've sold about maybe it's 5 times platinum, something like that. And we convinced the record label and everybody involved that at least up to $1 million we would donate to Children's Hospital, which we did, which was absolutely phenomenal. I'm sorry, not Children's Hospital, Save the Children. I'm thinking of too many organizations.
You even used the heartbeat, right? To write.
Yeah, I flew down to Guatemala and we were visiting these malnourished, underprivileged places, which is uncanny. They basically eat corn for 98% of their meals, which does not do a body good. It's like, even down to like, if you've been to certain parts of indigenous parts of Central America and you notice that they're a lot shorter and smaller, like the average person's 5'2". And I kept asking, why is everybody, they're like, they don't get nutrients, they get corn. And that's like it. And, you know, I won't go down the dog leg on all of what that was, but it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And we recorded some heartbeats from some children down there, and that turned into the beat for Feel Again. And so I think that anytime that an artist or a company at this point, if you're launching a company in 2020, whatever it is, and you're not starting with a social give back component, you're not thinking, how can I give part of my net proceeds to, you know, whatever organization you're lined up with, whether it's, if it's vaccine research and development, because of the time that we're in, and Lord knows we need that. If it's children, if it's cancer, I just think that the smart companies and smart organizations this day and age, you're doing the right thing. You're not just profit monsters, right? That's right. You're lining up with something that actually truly makes the world a better place. And I don't think that's cliche. I think that's just a noble pursuit. I think it's the right thing to do. So for Better Days, that was our alignment. You know, we wanted to give back, because I mean, at that point, we're talking late March of this year, the absence of PPE, you know, the lack of masks. I mean, all of a sudden, you know, the world was in a tailspin. So we wanted to give as much as we could.
Absolutely, and thank you again, and thank you to Interscope for joining you in those efforts. So, Ryan, I have 2 more quick questions for you before I open up to our Q&A.
For sure.
Here's a fun one. I have a favorite sync of yours, and I'm curious to hear yours. My favorite, which is with a little tongue in cheek, but when Secrets was used in an episode of 30 Rock, when Tina Fey was doing her monologue. Yeah. Tina Fey is Liz Lemon. She did this meta monologue about how manipulative music cues can be as a storytelling device, and they're tricking you. And then Secrets kicks in, and they shoot each other dramatic glances. My favorite.
That actually,
True Blood. That was
wow. You know what? I don't know if I can beat that. That might be one of my all-time favorites. I'm trying to think if there's any other sync. I did the theme song for a Dr. Pepper campaign back in the day. That was pretty awesome. That was a high point. That was a fun one. Nobody really knows that nobody even really knows that it was me singing. It was kind of a little trick.
Wow.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. You know what, man, that might actually, you and I might be aligned on that. That okay. 30 Rock. You know, there was another one. I Lived got used as the
Glee finale, right?
Yeah, it got used as the Glee finale, like the final episode of Glee, and I Lived became the entire tapestry of that. You know, like that. It summed up, you know, what obviously put Ryan Murphy on the map and revived, I think, largely in part revived musicals, if I'm being honest. I think that I Lived being used at the end of Glee would be probably my favorite. But it's a close tie with 30 Rock.
Yeah, really very different emotions in those two uses, but I like
very
that.
much. Very much.
All right, my last question is, well, first I want to just tee up all the songs you have out in the world at this moment. You just dropped the latest One Republic single, Wildlife, 2 weeks ago. You're a co-writer on the new Blackpink single with Cardi B, Bet You Wanna. You co-wrote and co-produced Alicia Keys' latest single, Love Looks Better, which she debuted at the NFL kickoff game last month. You co-wrote and co-produced the title track to John Legend's Bigger Love album, which he performed in his ABC primetime special this summer. One Republic has a single with Kygo called Lose Somebody that's already been streamed more than 169 million times on Spotify alone since its release early this year. And last but not least, as you mentioned, your song with Lady Gaga and Elton John, Sign from Above, is not only on her album Chromatica, it's the current theme to the new Valentino fragrance commercial. These, of course, were, I'm sure, all underway well before COVID, but I'm curious, in this moment we're in now, have you been able to maintain the same productivity?
I've been like, and I mean this with no hyperbole. And funny enough, not all of those, two of those songs came out of COVID.
Wow.
The Kygo song was recorded, finished, produced, and everything during COVID. This is April. My Cardi B, Blackpink, which is the next single, I believe, that was written and recorded in June during COVID. And I'm trying to think, the Gaga song was done a while ago. And then the John Legend song was finished during COVID, which became a Postmates campaign, funny enough. Yeah, so I during this time period, I can say without any exaggeration, the way that I'm wired is I've always had an underdog mentality. I always have. I've always felt like the underdog as a writer, the underdog as a band. And if something goes, if bad times happen, I tend to over exert myself to like prove to myself, all right, this is a garbage year, but I'm gonna try to have the best year I've ever had, just to like truly make lemonade out of lemons. And so what COVID ended up doing for me, like my benefit, was now I'm not traveling 300,000 miles. So in a typical year, I will travel anywhere from 150 to 400,000 miles, just zinging around the earth, doing private concerts, doing tours, doing promo, doing all this stuff. I lose so much creative time and sleep and energy doing that traveling. That's not happening. So now I actually have, for the first time in my career since I was 23, I have the same amount of time that every other songwriter has. Like when I was over the power of the last 13 years, trying to get the singles on various different artists, Ellie Goulding or Ed Sheeran or Maroon 5, and I'm competing with the Max Martins of the world and like the Stargates and Benny and all my friends. I was always so jealous that they had 5 days a week, not on airplanes, to just work for 9 hours a day. I've never had that. So I was working in hotels and on airplanes and green rooms. And now I have that time. So I've really tried to make the most usage of it. I've written probably, and I'm not, no exaggeration, probably three, or if not even more, 3 to 4 times the amount of songs since COVID started that I had written in the previous 24 months. So writing these days is, starting the sync and licensing company, Sync House, which we are about to do a press release coming soon, which is basically you're getting for licensing TV and film. Our whole vision behind that, and that launched during COVID, was I'm going to start focusing on syncs and film more, because usually I would just do it kind of on the side. Now I'm going to be focused on it. And for a lot of these, they end up being One Republic songs. We just wrapped Clifford the Big Red Dog. We did Clouds. Wildlife actually is the end title for Clouds, the Disney movie. So that's why we did it. It was for that film, written for that film specifically. And now I'm just really laser focused on it. I'm enjoying songwriting more now than I ever have. I'm back into producing a lot more and doing all the tracks and build out and music. And I'm trying to have as much fun as possible, because I too feel like Groundhog's Day. I have probably one day every 2 weeks where I'm just bummed and like kind of like quasi depressed. And just like everybody else, even if I'm having a good week, it doesn't matter how good the news is, I'll just call my manager or my wife and I'll be like, I'm just like so depressed today. I just feel like, is any of it real? Are all these Zooms adding up to anything? Like, is it actually real? Even I had my first country #1 this year with Thomas Rhett and John Party, Beer Can't Fix.
Right.
was my first number one. So I've been, I started in Nashville. I finally have my country number one. It's in June. And I remember the moment it hit number one, I get a text from Scott Borchetta and from Thomas Rhett. And all of a sudden I'm going like this. Yeah, yeah. And I look around my studio and I'm like, no one's here. And I can't go out and celebrate. And,
oh man.
And even so, I'm sure if anybody watching, even like they can relate, even when you have a really good day during this weird year, you're kind of like, but how good is it? Like, how can
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like, should we pop? Like, should we just, have a drink, even though we're probably already drinking too much anyway? It's just it's just weird. But I'll shut up and let you carry on to the Q&A. How I process bad times, I'm the type of driver, right? On the highway or what have you. If I see an accident coming or about to happen, I punch the gas and I drive through it. Yeah. I'm not the guy that slows down and takes a look at it. I'm like, to hell with that. I'm cutting through this. And so that's been my approach with COVID. Staying busy, staying creative keeps my mind off of the CNN sound bites or Fox News, they're all like, at this point, I don't believe any of them, but I'm trying to really stay focused on creating and block out as much bad as humanly possible. And staying busy has been my salvation during this time.
Absolutely. We gotta appreciate the silver linings while we have them. Okay, so I want to jump into the Q&A real quick. We have a question from Brittany Davis. This is a good one. She's basically asking, what ratio should songwriters keep in mind as they're starting to pitch for sync? How many songs should you have in your arsenal, given the batting average when you're first starting out? Should you have, how many should you be writing or recording a month in your demo?
So just so you know, my philosophy and I came up with this. It's funny. I came up with this philosophy this year. My new approach to sync and film. I'll give you a little insider baseball pro tip. Your average director or like producer, but typically it's the director. If we're talking film, for instance, landing a song in a film, directors, they need to say no. They need to have the ability to say no. That's a big part of what they do. And there is a gap between music supervisors and advertising agencies and the director or the client. So you're serving a lot of cooks in this kitchen, right? You've got the company themselves and their CMO and whoever's below them. You have your advertising agency, right, who has designed the ad and they have their own creative ideas. And then you might have some music supervisor liaison. Yep. What I've found is historically there is a gap between the person that's communicating to you and what the actual client wants. And it's a bit of the telephone game. So for instance, let's say a campaign is going to go live in June of 2021. And in February, they start looking for the songs for this campaign. Between February and June, the director or whoever is really controlling the creative might have shifted their perspective or their opinion on what the right type of song is. Or there might be a new song that comes out culturally and he goes, oh, I want it to sound more like Post Malone's Sunflower, right? Or whatever the vibe is. You need to stay as up to date as possible. If you have the ability to get the actual, if you're already in, this is maybe a little bit more beyond just beginners, but I'll get to that. If you've already established yourself somewhat as a writer for TV licensing film, really try to get the direct from the horse's mouth intel on what the director and the head of creative wants, because that gap between what the music supervisor tells you and what the director actually wants will cost you a lot of time and a lot of heartache. And I'm not going to name names, but there's a handful of huge films that I was a part of that I removed myself because I would spend a day, 2 days working on a song exactly to what this music supervisor wanted, only to find out the director had changed their mind. And it was just this massive waste of time. So if you're just getting going writing songs right now and you're a beginner for TV licensing, film, commercials, you name it, my lucky number is 3. So for every spot, I will submit 3 songs. And why is that? Now, of those three, almost all the time, I know the song they're going to pick because I know which one is the one.
Yeah.
But you need to give them the ability to pass on one or two.
Right.
You can almost, I'm not saying give them garbage songs, give them three, right? But you kind of know which one's the one. But you need to give them the ability to say, I don't like that one. I don't like A, I don't like C, but man, B, I think that's the one. That just, I'm telling you, it puts the power back in their hands, and they don't feel like, well, this person just gave me one song and it's sink or swim with this. So that's a little thing that I kind of came up with. It's not like it's a genius idea, but I came up with that idea, that theory back in February when we went out for a project. And I remember calling Brent. I said, don't send the song in. Don't send it in. Send in, let's grab two other songs that we have kind of finished. Let's lump them in with the one we know is the winner, and let's see what happens. Yeah. We did that. And I'm telling you, like the next 4 licensing sync situations we landed ourselves in February, March, April, we got all 4 of them. And we did the same thing each time. And maybe it's luck, maybe it's not, but I think that that's a one little trick that I would employ. And avoid romantic boy, girl, girl, whatever. Avoid romantic lyrics unless it's a Hallmark ad asking for romantic lyrics. Avoid romantic lyrics. Think more universality, hooky, soccer stadium, aspirational lyrics. Not cheesy, but more aspirational lyrics and less romantic.
Okay, wow. Again, numerous masterclass bullet points to take away. One more quick question for you before we introduce the second half of this panel. We have Bobby in the Q&A who is from your hometown of Tulsa, and she's asking, which I think is very appropriate, do you still need to be based? Do you need to move to LA to get discovered? Can you be discovered from Tulsa in this age of the bedroom producer, right?
You can get discovered from Tulsa. Look, I'm trying to sign a songwriter right now. I partner with Murda Beats, big hip hop producer, who's a friend of mine, and we're trying to co-sign this producer right now who's 19 years old, and he's out of Prague, Czech Republic. We found him on the internet. Murda just signed a writer. I just wrote to a song with one of Murda's writers, who is from Munich, who's living in Munich, Germany. So to answer Bobby's question, 2-part answer. I would say that, look, for the last 20 years, one of the first, any of the panels that I've done, I don't do a lot of them, but when I do them, back in the day when I was ASCAP and I would do the panel, I would have told you, like, my first word of advice when I remember somebody was like, hi, I'm from Utrecht, Holland. And I know that I have hit songs and I've written, hit songs that are better than what's on radio. How can I get into the music industry? This is in 2010, right? And I said, you're from Utrecht, where do you live? And she said, Utrecht. I still live in Utrecht. I said, nope, you need to get on a plane. You need to move to London, or you need to move to LA or New York, or Nashville. I've softened on my opinion on that only in the last year or two. I think COVID has actually accelerated the ability for artists and writers to get discovered and to find work not living in LA. Yeah. Prior to the last 2 or 3 years, I would have told you 100%, you need to get to LA, you need to get to New York. New York has sadly all but died as a music city in terms of the creative community. I have one songwriter signed, the Cautious Clay, that still lives in Brooklyn. And there are a couple that I know that still live there, but it's just not. I used to go on writing trips to New York all the time. I don't do that anymore. If I do that, it's to write with me or somebody, that flew there with me. New York is not a super creative place anymore. Unfortunately, it's seasonal. It will come back.
It will be. Yeah.
I would advise Tulsa. Yes, you can. Now more than ever, you can get discovered wherever you are. But I will say this. I would still say that if you want to do this as a full-time, you want to make a living writing songs for licensing, TV, film, sync, other artists, what have you, you would still be greatly increasing your odds if you did live in Los Angeles, Nashville, Miami, London. Those are the cities that still, you don't have to live there, I'm just saying that it would increase your odds because the creative community likes to see each other and collaborate. There is still a little bit of the out of sight, out of mind mentality to music supervisors. Specifically for films, music supervisors want to know that they can bring you in to come watch the movie, bring you in to watch the scene, come visit your studio. And if you're in Tallahassee or, in the middle of the country, you're not as accessible. But if it's great, it'll cut through. And I do think that it is possible to make a living in Tulsa, in anywhere else. And again, that's a very new concept. Only in the last couple of years, I think, has that been truly achievable.
Absolutely. All right, well, Ryan, we can't thank you enough for joining us and being so generous with your time and especially your insights. So for everyone who's joined, please join me in thanking Ryan for kicking us off.
Absolutely. By the way, go get your vote on.
That's right. I have my ballot right here. I cannot wait to fill it out and make a plan.
Awesome. All right, guys. Good luck. Write them songs.
Good to see you, Ryan.
Sing
Thank
pretty.
you so much.
All right. See ya.